Hey,
There we go.
there we go.
All right.
What's up, man?
Welcome to Instagram.
It's a whole new world.
Yeah, you hang out like over with all the writers at Twitter.
Yeah, you know me.
Cool. Um, are you holed up in the greater Philadelphia part of New Jersey?
I am indeed. Yes, I've been held up here for whatever, as long as you probably 6 weeks now. Is this week 6?
Something like that.
Shaved my beard off, so sorry.
I did the opposite. I didn't have a beard this winter. I decided to do a Corona beard now.
Okay.
So why not? Um,
So what are you drinking over
Cool.
there?
Let's go. Oh, what am I drinking? Okay, sure. This is 2017 Cabernet Franc from Hickory Hollow, which is Nathan Kendall's sort of second label.
Yep.
He makes the wine. His family, his parents have had this brand for years, and he only makes Cabernet Franc, or he had only been making Cab Franc for this label, and but he's going to start making some for the Nathan K label and keep making it for this too. You tasted the wine. I think you
What did I give it? Tell me what I
give
gave
it I don't know. It was good though. I know you
it. I
liked
gave
it.
it 90 plus points. Sure.
Something
It's
like
great.
that. Yeah.
I love
Let's.
that wine.
I want to. Did you bring a Shannon?
I did.
Cool. I want to get to that. Let's work
Oh,
our
you
way
wanted me to
through.
save it?
Let's catch up, and we'll get to the
Okay.
Loire. Um, what what I wanted to sort of talk to you about is, your career as a wine writer, but kind of how you got there. So going way back, because you studied writing in college,
Yeah.
and
Um,
then what was your first?
that's going way back. I mean,
I guess what was
that's
your
going
first
really
like?
far back. Yeah.
What was the first full-time gig as a reporter or writer?
I mean, I went to an MFA program for creative writing and, was writing a really bad novel and kind of gave that up. But my first reporting job was I worked for the Atlantic City Press as like a municipal reporter. I had nothing to do with food, drink, travel, anything. I covered like Wildwood, New Jersey.
You were like sort of whatever they threw at you.
Scoops McGee, right? The Cub reporter. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And how long were you there?
Not long, not long. I mean, and and then I bounced around and I did a lot of travel writing and I was a restaurant critic in Philadelphia for Philly Magazine for a while and Philadelphia Daily News, etc. And then, I don't know, kind of from travel to food to spirits. I had this spirits column at the Washington Post for a long time.
I knew Washington Post was in there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So after
And
Atlantic City, was there ever another sort of like legit reporting gig where you're writing about like foreign wars and things like that?
I did a little bit of that, like as a freelance in like the, mid to late '90s. I reported some from like Central America and Haiti and stuff like that, for a little while. But like, no, nothing too exciting or dangerous, I guess. But no, and then I've been pretty much freelance ever since then.
Did you have any journalism angle at all to your college degrees, or was that just kind of
No, I actually had none.
did
I
you just
never
get
had
in as
any.
a job?
No, I never had any journalism classes ever. I mean, maybe it shows, but I never had a journalism class. It was all literature classes, creative writing.
So
I work for my school newspaper. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Is this?
how did you sort of shift from reading probably a lot of fiction and just cultural, essays and things like that to just straight up reporting and then sort of, I guess, criticism?
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of money in early career literary fiction, and so you kind of need a job, and so I wasn't teaching. I was a reporter. And so, I mean, that's what I did. And that's kind of where it went, you know. And then I just kind of gave up on the fiction and, you know, started writing. And I started doing a lot of travel writing. I mean, I think that's really the way I got into the wine writing, was travel writing, you know. And I think a lot of wine writing really is travel writing if you think about it. So, I mean, it's really, I think that was the best preparation for, you know, wine and spirits writing, for sure, the travel.
What were some of the earliest reviews you were doing, and like who were you reading back then? Like either, you know, beverage or food or travel related or not, just who were you reading to sort of just check out other criticism?
Well, when I started doing the restaurant reviewing, I mean, you're reading, you know, whoever was at that time. I guess it was Ruth Reichel and, you know, people like that, you know, in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, it was people like, you know, Jonathan Gold, those kind of people. And, you know, so I think like that was really the first criticism, was restaurant criticism, you know, writing about, you know, restaurants in Philadelphia. And at that time, it was a pretty exciting time because there was a lot going on. There's always a lot going on in the Philadelphia restaurant scene, but I mean, it was at that time, there was it was kind of like still the first boom that was kind of happening. And
what were those years?
It would have been early 2000s.
Okay.
Early
Did
2000s.
you get out of Philly at all for that restaurant critic job? Like, did you go to review restaurants in New York or anywhere else for that Philly publication?
No, but I was always doing travel. I always had travel assignments and stuff in the meantime. So, I mean, I was traveling a lot at that time to Iceland and Portugal and Italy and, you know, Central America and, you know, lots of places. So it wasn't like I know, you know, Philadelphia probably seems to have like a small worldview, but I mean, I was getting out of Philadelphia once in a while.
So what was Philly like? I mean, what was the restaurant trajectory from then to now sort of in Philly? Because you probably keep up with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Philadelphia restaurant scene's always been really, I mean, at least since like the 90s, it's been incredible. I mean, as far as it has to be, you know, it's always kind of like under the radar, I guess, compared to obviously like New York, San Francisco, LA, New Orleans, you know, but I mean, there's so much going on. And I think the one thing that is a little bit disappointing is like, and it's gotten a lot better, and there's definitely a lot of good places for wine, but I mean, that's something that's kind of lagged behind, you know, and it's all because of the
Right.
the monopoly, the PLCB, the state, you know, monopoly on wine, which kind of keeps prices high and selection bad.
So when I think of Philadelphia, I think of like Mark Vetri, and chefs like that. He came and did a dinner at a restaurant that I was working at in Manhattan once.
Michael Salmanoff and
right.
Right. I mean, then you've got like restaurants like Veg, which, you know, is, I mean, that's for a vegan restaurant is like really groundbreaking. And I mean, there's tons going on.
So you were, I guess your first venture into criticism was restaurants, and then later beverages, sort of in particular.
Right.
That
was something I always thought, by the way, like when I was doing my restaurant reviews. I mean, I thought that like, and this is still the case, I think like a lot of restaurant critics do a really shitty job with the drinks, you know, a lot of times. I mean, like I think Pete Wells does a good job. He used to write about drinks. I mean, he seems to know what's going on. But I mean, a lot of critics around the country are not, you know, and so a lot of these restaurants, the wine list, it's sort of like, I don't know, it gets barely like a cursory mention in the review, you know. So I don't like, I really felt like, you know, that was something even then I felt like I liked writing about the drinks part of it. So
it's interesting. I think Pete Wells does a pretty good job with it too, but people do not agree with us.
No, I agree. I know. Everybody just thinks the restaurant critics do a shitty job of writing about drinks. So.
No, but he does. I like when he writes about wine, but it's just like the wine industry or the sommelier industry gets mad if like their name is not mentioned in the review, you know. But I don't know. I agree. I like the way he writes about wine. Uh, so how would you? That's
That's like,
interesting because I
the
want.
guy who does the cocktail list. He doesn't get, he or she doesn't get, mentioned either. It's kind of like, oh God.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, let's be honest. The far majority of the people are not reading that review to learn anything about beverages.
No, probably not.
Uh, but so that I've always kind of I would have loved to have had that job even just for fun. I've never reviewed a restaurant. Um, and how do you teach yourself that sort of thing?
What sort of thing?
Restaurant criticism.
I don't know. You just eat out a lot, really. I mean, my friend, Craig Laban is a colleague, a friend, and he's like a longtime critic at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I mean, he had this thing where, like, okay, he's not a chef, but to be honest, a critic probably eats out more than a chef does. I mean, we're eating out 5, 6, 7 nights a week, So, I mean, we're looking at two different things. So, I don't know. I mean, you
No,
could
you're
go to
right.
culinary school. You could go to,
That's a really good
and that's
point.
like such an old debate. I mean, have you ever been a chef? Have you ever worked in a kitchen? I mean, yes. I mean, but I don't know that prepared me for being a restaurant critic. I think going out to dinner a lot did.
Hmm. So how would you say I mean, did that help, or is it not related at all when it comes to, assessing beverages for quality?
Oh, I think it helped a lot. I mean, I think it's really like, for me, it's been really important just because of my approach. I mean, like, I'm not a trained som. I mean, I haven't done any of the courses or anything like that. I guess just like I didn't do any journalism work and wasn't a chef in a restaurant. So, I mean, look at me. I'm completely unqualified in many people's eyes to do anything that I do, really. But I mean, I think that because I was always writing for the Post, I was always writing for like the general reader, the general like consumer. And so, I was connecting with them in a different way. My writing,
Hmm.
my books, they probably, a lot of them, I know this because I hear it sometimes, that sometimes it doesn't really pass the SOM test, but it's not really necessarily always speaking to like a really, really super knowledgeable in the bubble, like wine crowd, it's often, trying to kind of connect with, more of a casual wine drinker or somebody who really likes wine but doesn't know a lot about it or something like that. I mean, that's just a lot of, obviously what I do for Vinous isn't like that, but I mean, I'm saying the other stuff, the stuff I would have done for the Post or my books, I'm trying
Hmm.
to tell a story that someone who maybe likes food, likes to go to restaurants and drink wine, or, likes to drink wine at home might read, and not be, maybe they don't give a shit about the soil, like, I mean, but I mean, they want to hear a cool story about the wine or something. So that's what, I'm trying to tell them.
Well, so as I guess either restaurants or we can get into wine now. How do you, sort of assimilate the know-how to assign a value, whether it's stars in a newspaper for a restaurant or points for a publication like Vinous?
Yeah. I mean, it's something, I gotta be honest, it's something I've always been pretty ambivalent about. I mean, I guess because I think it's impossible. I mean, and it really kind of hit me when I was doing the Loire, this year, about like the scores that historically these wines, like especially like the Cab Franc and the Chenin Blanc, got over the years from all of them, not just Vinous, but like Wine Spectator and the Advocate and everything. We're always like way underscored. Like the highest you could possibly ever get it with a Chenin was like 93 points or something, and it was like, are you kidding? I mean, that was like, I mean, there were a few that got more than that, but mostly no, and I just thought, this is insane. I mean, like the number, the Wine Spectator at the end of last year put out like a survey of their scores for the year. And I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to butcher it, but something like 6% of the French wines last year got 90 points, 94 points or higher, something like that. Like less than 1% of Loire wines got 94 points or higher. How is that even possible? You know, like, I mean, is it saying that like it's like that much worse than every other wine region in France? Like it's just, it's like a certain generation of critics just, you know, that wasn't their jam. And so they still have these jobs and they don't, you know, rate the wines as high. I mean, I think it's changing certainly, but you know, that's just how it's gone, I think, you know? And so that's how, I mean, that's we all know this. I mean, you know, like, you know, a lot of people, who cares about numbers anymore? I mean, that's sort of what you read all over the place, right? I mean, so, you know.
Well, and historically, like, you know, when I've talked to older sommeliers who I really respect, they tell me that they all read Parker. You know, I'm talking sommeliers who would now maybe be in their 50s, you know, coming up, they all read Parker. They didn't so much always look at the numbers. They did look at the numbers because that's going to tell them what was going to sell really well, and if they needed to get their hands on it for, you know, popularity or whatever. But they always said that they just read the writing, and then that was what mattered most to them because it was good.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's what matters to me. So I hope that that's the case. I mean, really. I mean. So
yeah. So let's talk about your Finger Lakes review at Vinous, because I mean it was, you know, sort of a Mount Everest of reviews. There's a lot of wine and you know, a lot of pros that went along with it. How did you sort of, you know, I guess you probably knew ahead of time that you were going to write, you know, a pretty lengthy, you know, piece of long form journalism about your experience in the region and all that, followed by all the individual scores and assessments of the winery. So if that was the framework, what was, you know, sort of the plan of attack? And throughout that process, I guess also, you know, how did you go in to assess wine for quality?
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew we wanted to do at least minimum of like 40 producers. And even then, I mean, there were places we missed or places that just didn't want to participate. There were 2 or 3 that just didn't want their wines reviewed for whatever reason. And we knew we wanted to do at least 300 or so wines. I mean, so, but, and the problem, and not the problem, but the issue was like, we were coming in, like the reviews, it hadn't been done in like 3 years. And so, and then we were also trying to do like little mini verticals. And so, you know, and, you know, in the Finger Lakes, nobody just has like, you know, in Loire, it's like, well, here's our cab and here's the single vineyard and here's our Chenin and okay, here's 4 or 5 wines and you're out the door. I mean, my God, in the Finger Lakes, it's like people are pouring 27 wines in their tasting room and they want you to taste every single one of them. Like, please, you know, taste all the hybrids and taste the Chambourcin and taste the, you know, the Gewürztraminer and whatever. I mean, everything, you know, it's like, you know, so I would go in and think I was going to taste 12 wines and, you know, be like, oh yeah, well, oh, that was just the whites. Now we have 17 reds to taste too, or, you know, whatever. I mean, it was just like, so yeah, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, and I think that's one of the things I found with the Finger Lakes is that it might be time to specialize a little bit. Some of these places, you know, not make everything. And I guess there's a reason for that, right? I mean, it's the tasting room. People are there on vacation. They need to have new stuff to taste.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. And then there's also just, you know, when you have a sort of a tricky cold climate like that, you know, it's been worth experimenting with a lot of different grapes over the years to see what really does work. And then when you do that, you know, there's always someone who like is going to make some kick-ass wine out of some grape that maybe shouldn't be there. And then it's like that one person makes a wine that's really, really solid. So then their neighbor's like, wow, you know, I've got some of that planted too. And then and that's just kind of lore. But I mean, you almost see that with your own eyes when you're there. But you're right. And it reminded me when you said, you know, that as a restaurant critic, you're going out to eat a lot more than chefs are. And I used to have to tell the wineries, you know, when we bring a group of trade up there, like you got to cool it on you got to cool it on the Rieslings. You know, you can't, they're tasting like 8 Rieslings at every single winery. By the time they get to winery number 3, you know, it's just a lot of the same. Uh, and that's really coming from feedback from the trade. So it was actually pretty easy to then learn from that and coach the wineries. Say, you know, I'm getting better information from the trade than I am the wineries, because the trade sees 30 wineries on that trip. The winery sees the group of trade once for an hour. So in
Right.
terms of how to sort of curate all of that, I'm listening to the trade because they see the whole thing.
They know what. I mean, I think it's really hard in the Finger Lakes though, because what I mean, some people do the traditional, you know, they do Riesling and they do Cab Franc, you know, whatever, and then, but then there's a lot of other stuff that's exciting. A lot of people are, you know, doing Chardonnay, which is interesting, you know, and I know Nathan's doing, for instance, is, you know, right, he's got some Chardonnay, yeah, and
Yeah.
so
Every winemaker below the age of 40, all they want to do is tell you about their Chardonnay
Chardonnay,
in
exactly
the
right,
Finger
yeah,
Lakes. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I hear you've got like, you know, Chris Bates is trying Syrah, and a lot of people are trying Blaufränkisch, and you know, and so, and a lot of that stuff is really cool and interesting. So, I mean, I guess you do want to taste it all.
Yeah. Well, and then there you go. It's like you just named a bunch of people who tend to like kick ass with that one grape, like Chardonnay. I mean, I know Ben Riccardi, I think, is listening from Osmode. Like he's really hanging his hat on Chardonnay, and
He
to
is.
great result. And you know, the trade has really liked those wines, and yeah, I mean, there's definitely a good case to be made for Chardonnay. It's just selling it is a different story. But then the Blaufränkisch too, which you wrote a lot about in your book, Godforsaken Grapes, from your time in Austria. What was that experience like, getting all that Blaufränkisch from New York in that short amount of time?
Yeah, I think it's good though. I mean, I think that's one of the real promising ones in the Finger Lakes for sure. That's like, I would say, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think it has more promise than Pinot Noir does there. I mean, so I mean, I think that the I wish they wouldn't call it Lemberger.
Some of them do. Some of them are changing. I know at least 2 wineries that have changed, that have made the efforts to change their labels, which is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You know, TTB and all that. Like, but yeah, there are some who are shifting. And then, you know, I used to be in that camp. I used to want everyone to just change the Blaufränkisch. But then when I heard what the reason was, I kind of liked it. Which, like, I think it was John Martini, the owner and you know, grower at Anthony Road. It was like when we bought the vines, when we bought the plant material, it was called Lemberger because they got it from a nursery that maybe got cuttings from Germany originally, or somebody there
Yeah.
knew it as being from Germany, and that's why it was labeled like that at the nursery, and that's why they called it that. I don't know. I kind of like that story.
All right. Well, fair
um,
enough.
so okay, Finger Lakes. So we've talked a little bit about Cab Franc, a little bit about some of the reds. Do you think that it really, really behooves the Finger
That's
Lakes
funny. I just
to
saw somebody say, you know, just call it Keck Francas, the Aryan, you know.
do you think that Riesling is, you know, the just the way to go, like forget it, you know, period, amen, Riesling is the Finger Lakes? Or, you know, should
No,
people
there's a lot of great Chardonnay. I mean, for sure. I just think probably it's going to be harder for them to, you know, there's Chardonnays everywhere. I mean, I think it's just harder to be unique. I mean, it's just, but that's more of a marketing thing than anything else. But the wines are good, or some of them are.
well, it's, I mean, Riesling is, you know, it's just a tough sell. I mean, it's, you have a dedication from the trade. The trade absolutely loves Riesling. They revere it just like it's white Burgundy or something like that. You know, like I'm talking like mostly benchmark German Riesling, but ton of respect for, regions like the Finger Lakes and Ontario, some other places. But it's just hard to sell in terms of moving a lot of it. So I wonder, like, I think the region's gonna always produce. There's always been something kind of magic about the Rieslings from the Finger Lakes. So I think it'll always kind of be probably the star of the show and everything. But if given the choice and you had the right site, should you plant more Riesling? You know what I mean?
Well, right, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like Riesling, but I understand.
I do too.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
But Cabernet Franc and red wine in general, like the Blanc Frankish, the Cab Franc, what little Pinot there is, and then there's
I would plant more red wine. Yeah, that's. I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, yes, I would plant more red wine. I mean, I think it's the red wine that's coming from the Finger Lakes is a lot better than it ever was. I mean, and I think it's really interesting. So why not?
Yeah, I mean, I never don't have an open bottle of Riesling in my fridge, but I think about the sort of just what people want to drink, and we did a Cabernet Franc seminar earlier in the year with a really nice group of trade, and I mean that's what they were talking about for the rest of the trip. And now, so I want to ask you, because you're in the Loire now, and I think right now is a really cool time to be kind of tasting New York Cabernet Franc and Loire Cabernet Franc like at the same time. Because I really think that New York, of all the New World regions, is really sort of nailing it for Cab Franc.
When they lay off the oak, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I bet you tell me a little bit about your trip to the Loire.
Yeah, I was just there at the end of January for 2 weeks. Was focused mainly on.
Were you at any of the fairs, or were you?
No. I went like right before the fair. So I mean, because I was having. I think I visited like 40 or 50 producers. A little over 2 weeks. So, I mean, it was like pretty intensive, like meetings, tasting wines, and and it's much better to do in private. But, that was a great time to go because people were already ready for the fairs. The wines were bottled. It was like people had time. It was calm. And it was great. I mean.
So how'd you do it geographically?
Yeah, I arrived in Angers and like kind of worked my way east, So I was in Anjou. I was in Saunière. I was in Saumur, Chinon. I kind of worked Vouvray, Mont-Louis.
Did you get as far out by the coast, like out to Nantes, like Muscadet? And
no, we're gonna do that later in the year. If we can travel again at some point. I mean, yeah. So we were kind of splitting it into 3 or 4 reports. So we'll do the Muscadet later in the year, and then we'll do Sancerre later in the year too. So yeah, this was really focused on. Really kind of just, I mean, we did a little bit of, there's, Cote and, some other things. But, I mean, mostly it was Cab Franc and Chenin Blanc, basically, was what we were totally focused on. So, yeah.
That's pretty
Not
cool.
so bad. It was great. And so that'll result in, like, 2 reports. And I think it'll be, like, 450 wines or something, and.
Tell me about some of the good red wine that you had. Any, just like, even just a couple?
Yeah, I mean, geez, I don't know. I had a lot. I'll keep it vague. I had a lot. I don't know. I mean, this is supposed to come out soon, so I'm probably not supposed to.
I mean, I was in the Loire last year with my family, and we stayed. At first, we were in on the Mont-Louis or Loire side of the river. What was the name? Can't remember. I forget the first time. And then we were in Saumur later in the trip. But it wasn't really a wine trip, but was drinking wine every day with dinner and all that. And I went to one winery, La Grange Tiffon, and then we went to Chinon, but to go to the castle and all that.
Yeah.
But like when I was there, I mean, we were drinking all sorts of stuff at dinner, like Cab Franc, Sancerre Rouge, so Pinot Noir and like Pinot Doni and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
my
very good.
family like really was liking the red wines. It was the summer, it was hot, and these are all like very lean, modest, sort of elegant wines with a lot of acid and like very peppery, which adds that, I think, sort of enhances the refreshing element of those wines, makes them good summer reds. And they were asking me like, where else can you drink wines like this? And I said, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, for red wines, like New York. I mean, in terms of another place where you can look to get wines with that kind of like red wine with that like lightness and fresh sort of salinity.
True. I mean, it's
Were
not.
you were you
It's what's
drinking
so
more of
unique
that?
about it. I mean, I think that's what people, maybe the kind of wine drinker that was 20 years ago didn't like it because they were used to this like rich, dense, opulent, fruity wines. I mean, the Cab Franc, the traditional is it's a savory wine, and so, and, yeah, it's certainly fresh, great acidity, and, great drinkability, but, it's, yeah, I mean, there isn't many regions like that. I mean, you can think of the other similar wines, but no, I mean, like like an entire wine region that makes wines like that. No, there's not many places like that in the world. Really, very many at all. And I think it's what makes it so unique. And, it's like, that's what's great about, I mean, for me, it's like, these are the kind of wines that everybody's looking for right now. So, that's nice to.
So in your travels there, were you like sort of focused on more like any particular style, like more like lighter, kind of like once a week wines, or like more almost like full bodied stuff? I mean, were you hitting the like super
Well, I
heavy
think, I
hitters
mean,
as well?
it really like went in two avenues, and you did, you had like the greatest Tuesday night wines ever and great value, right? And yeah, you did have like a little bit more of this sort of those green notes, the olive, the like the pepper you're talking about, and then but then there is a whole other avenue that's like the older vines or specific sites, and yeah, I mean that some of them get super super opulent, super rich, and I mean it's not as many, but yeah, I mean there's definitely like there's two avenues there. I don't know what you prefer. I mean, and even those are great value. I mean, that's the thing. Like there's just like unbelievable value wines is really like the kind of, well, I mean, actually there, and I mean that's the similarity I think to the Finger Lakes as well. Like, I mean, just like the simple value of the wines is incredible.
Yeah, I mean the Loire, if you come across like a $300 bottle of red wine from the Loire on a restaurant list, like it's probably worth that, at least in terms of a fair markup or whatever. Um, yeah. And how did you get to taste anything while you were there that like with serious age?
Oh yeah, we did went back pretty far with Baudry, like Bernard
Hmm.
Baudry,
That's
and
that's awesome.
we went. I He opened some like early '90s, I think in 1986. It was like fantastic. Like it was really, and I mean I think that was another sort of. We're talking about like when I'm talking about like wine writers. I mean, obviously people have been touting Loire for quite a while. Like John Bonet's been writing a lot about it, and he's really knowledgeable and everything. But I'm talking about like point scoring critics, like the old guard of critics, right? Like if you had listened to them, you would believe that these wines were just like they were thin and green, and they didn't really age that well, right? But I mean, it's not true. It really is. I mean, the better ones, it's just not. It's just not. Didn't play itself out that way. I mean, so I every place I went, because like with just like with the Finger Lakes, Vinous hadn't done a report in Loire since like I don't know 2014 or something like that. So I mean, every place I went to, I was tasting older wines. I mean, maybe not back to the 80s or the early 90s, but I mean 10 years old, whatever, 5 years old, 6 years old, to fill in some gaps in the coverage. And yeah, I mean, they were like there was no, they aged. I mean, there wasn't like, you know, yeah, I mean, there were, maybe they're Tuesday night wines, but they also aged really well too.
Mm-hmm, totally. Yeah. So do you find any particular, in terms of the Cabernet Franc lexicon, like there's a lot of styles, a lot of things you can do with Cabernet Franc. And in New York, just like the Loire, there's a lot of wineries doing different things. Some going for that more extracted, sort of fuller style, maybe blending it a little bit. And then others going for, you know, just that like light pop, you know, with some, maybe some carbonic and just that refreshing fruitiness to sort of counterbalance the pyrazine for the pepperiness. Like, do you have a style that you prefer, or do you know why you like certain Cab Franc?
Well, when I went to it, I did like I didn't understand like when I did the Finger Lakes. I mean, people, like a lot of the producers there were like, "Oh my God, we're trying to stamp out any green note we can, any pyrazine, whatever, like we're just not, we're trying to get rid of it all." And I just thought that seemed like a kind of a fool's errand, because I mean, it is a little of it is, it's the character of the grape, right? And so I guess I really kind of, if you like Cab Franc, you like that, right? I mean, it's like, that's just part of it. I mean, and maybe someone like me will put up with a little more of it than maybe I should, right? And so I think maybe like being in Chinon and being, in some of these places and having like a little more elegant versions of them, I think I've come maybe a little bit more, I've changed a little bit, maybe like how much of the rusticity I'm willing to kind of like put up with, I guess, like I think that's changed a little bit, where I would have said like, well, it's a rustic variety and it should be this way, or, I mean, that's kind of, and like even the higher end one should have some of that character in them, or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's when you see like how many styles there are, and it's still Cab Franc. I mean, it's not like it's being masked by oak or, something that's done in the cellar or whatever. I mean, it's, so I think that I've like expanded over the years, I've expanded what I like and appreciate. I mean, about it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, in this, something that I think I've done the homework, and I think I can say that I tend to prefer Cab Franc that has some whole cluster, that has gone into the fermentation, or some legit straight up carbonic, whether it's partial, accidental, or intentional. I just I like that sort of fruitiness that the carbonic gives to sort of, work with the other characters, the greener, peppery, spicier notes. It's just like fruit and spice. It's a really nice marriage, and I've tried to talk to enough winemakers and verify like that this is correctly, in fact, what I like about Cabernet Franc. So
Yeah.
I feel confident saying that now, and that is not what the majority of people are doing in the Finger Lakes, and that's one of the reasons at least in my experience.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I wanted to open this, because this is probably like, I talked to him about it, like 20 or 30% whole cluster and some whole berry, so some partial carbonic too. And it's exactly hitting those notes. It's still pretty tight, pretty young. I'd probably throw the rest of it into a decanter maybe. But it's doing all that, and there are definitely other wineries that are doing whole cluster throughout the whole state. But on this particular seminar earlier in the year, 6 wineries, no whole cluster, 6 different versions of Cabernet Franc. All from the Finger Lakes, all delicious wines, and like I said, that group of trade walked away from that really, really enthused, how the wines showed. But I was surprised that more of them were not shifting to this, because it does seem to be sort of a hook for wine buyers in places like New York and San Francisco or Chicago or whatever.
Yeah, you mean that the Finger Lakes isn't moving towards that?
That more of them are not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know why, to be honest with you. I mean,
It's not for everyone, I guess, but it does seem to be um, what a lot of buyers in certain shops and restaurants want.
yeah, for sure. And there are some people, I mean, obviously Nathan, obviously Chris Bates and Element is doing that. And
There was that Chris Mathewson from Bellwether had that carbonic, 100% carbonic, I think, 2017 Cab Franc.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was sort of an influential one.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's enough of it certainly, but it'd be interesting to see if any more sort of shift to that. So tell me about this Shannon that you're drinking that I'm jealous of over there.
Oh yeah, this one. And I actually didn't get here, but this is this is imported by. Can you see it? I don't know.
I think I saw your post earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, Pierre Menard.
Yep, 2017 Anjou, right?
Yes, fantastic. Imported by Winemonger, and I
Did you visit them?
I didn't visit them actually. No, in fact, all the wines I have here are people I didn't visit because they need to be tasted
Oh,
still.
I see.
So I'm getting an early start on this hasn't been tasted, this hasn't been rated, so but I'm
Yeah,
enjoying it.
I imagine so. I imagine that's bone dry.
Bone dry, bone dry.
Yeah. What was your take on like eating out in the Loire?
We have to. I mean, I was there in January, so I mean, a lot was not open. You know, it was.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, which is kind of a shame. But I mean, the wine bar scene was still going. It was great. You know, I mean, and yeah, I mean, I certainly ate well. I mean, where did you eat? Like, where did you?
So I mean, it was June, so everything was open. But again, you know, I'm with family, so it was more sort of just traditional, classic kind of brasserie type places. But it was one thing I remember. This was my first time in the Loire too. Uh, it'd be tough for a vegetarian in the Loire. It was just so much meat
Are you a
all the
vegetarian?
time. I'm not,
Oh,
but I was there with my two nieces, and like, you know, in certain restaurants to get like just whatever, some French onion soup or something that's not like lamb or pork or a steak, like I mean, I loved it because pretty much every day I ate steak or lamb or pork, and drank a bunch of Cabernet Franc and Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. Um,
yeah,
but I just remember it being a lot of meat, and it makes sense. I mean, there's farms and cattle sort of everywhere.
yeah. I mean, I I'm trying to. Yeah, I mean, I did definitely. I guess it would be. I mean, I'm not a vegetarian either, so it didn't really occur to me. But yeah, I guess it would be very difficult for sure. Um,
Did you hang out in Paris at all when, like
Not
on the
this
way
time
in or on
around.
the?
No, not this time. Not this time around. Um, so what? How's isolation up in Rhinebeck right now?
Um, you know, I've been really good about staying home and just really don't do anything other than go out for essentials. And sometimes, you know, I'm very pleased with the way like the grocery store that I go to is handling their operation. It seems like they're taking it seriously and it's pro. So you know, hat off to them. But then like going somewhere else and it's just like any other day, you know, like I got an oil change the other day, right? And walking in there was just like any other day. No effort to really change anything. Um, but otherwise, you know, it's funny, even though it's quite rural where I am, I go out for walks and everyone's out for a walk.
Yeah, everyone's out for a walk. They've closed the park. There's a pond across from my house I can't go to because they've closed all the parks here. In Pennsylvania, they've closed all the wine and spirits stores, and so
Right.
everybody was like going down to Delaware, and then the state of Delaware like closed its borders and said, if you enter the state of Delaware, you have to quarantine here for 14 days. So it like they were stopping people, they were giving citations and whatever. So there's New Jersey.
Yeah, have you not been able to get anything, or are your
No,
grocery
I mean,
stores and everything?
I'm on the Jersey side, so I can get whatever I want to. But I mean, and things have been open, and it's not really, that big of a deal. Plus, I have a lot. I've been working on what I had from before. I haven't had to like run out very much to get anything.
I've ordered. It's been fun. I mean, trying to support the wineries. I ordered, a 6-pack here, 6-pack there from different New York wineries because so many of them are like completely waiving shipping, or really reasonable shipping. So that feels to me, I don't know, safer and more responsible maybe than going out to the liquor store.
Right.
And then I ordered a case of wine from Michigan, like for fun. Just check in on what's going on there. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. I was so bummed that you couldn't make the Long Island Reds lunch.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay. We got to get you some wines from Long Island. When's the last time you sort of had a comprehensive tasting of that stuff?
A comprehensive tasting? Maybe never, but I mean, I maybe was there 2 or 3 years ago to do a story, and I tasted around a little bit. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is the second year in a row we did that lunch, which was, red wines 10 plus years of age.
Yeah, cool.
And the wines are incredible. How well the wines age. Like last year we went all the way back to like 96 or 97. This year the oldest one was 01, which was like a Merlot from Wolfer, and I think there was another 01 from Palmer, also a Merlot, and just like these Merlots are aging beautifully, right up there with like the best I've had from California or Washington. Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
So I think I've been a little like cagey about the Loire stuff because we've got this big report coming out in a week or two. So, but one thing I can say about it is that of course it's like, to me, it's like the epicenter of like natural winemaking, I would say
now, yeah,
in the world, right? I mean, and so you do have this kind of like, I think that's another reason why you've had maybe some like older guard critics haven't really, been down with it, like, in the way. So, I mean, I think a lot of exciting stuff's going on, it's almost like what's strange is like it's like the peer pressure to be, organic or biodynamic or, be certified is like pretty intense. And, visiting even like the big co-ops that are doing like millions of bottles a year, like a significant portion of the production is like going to be organic, like they were like telling me like, some of this huge co-op is going to be like 50% of their production is going to be organic in 2020. It's just like, that's just like minimum price of entry anymore there, which is really excellent, as far as the whole region. So, I don't know that there's a lot of other regions that, and I think that's something to me, I guess I had some weird Twitter debate with Alice Firing, about like, she's insisting that, Vermont is going to be the natural wine capital of the United States in the next 10 years. And which I thought was insane, to be honest with you, I mean, so, but like, and I thought, but the Finger Lakes better get on it, a little bit. And, maybe more producers ought to, going organic or, getting certified. I think that you have the vines that are like the right age up there. I mean, I think that, why not? I mean, what's the holdup? What do you think the holdup is?
It's happening more and more. I mean, with the
Yeah.
vinifera, the big difference being that Vermont's all hybrids, and there's still a hefty vinifera concentration in the Finger Lakes, but there are a couple vinifera vineyards that are going for certification, and then there are always some that in a great year they'll be fully organic. They're just not certified because if you need to spray, you need to spray, and it's but there's a group of winemakers and growers that get together like monthly, I think, to really talk about biodynamic practices, and they're all trying different things out in their vineyards. And I was able to attend this was a lecture at Finger Lakes Community College, and really very cool, very inspiring. And I told Paul Brock at Silverthread, is kind of spearheads the group, and I was like, this is what you're talking about, and you need to get this word out. Like, this is something that the trade, sommeliers, like, they want to hear this stuff. They want to
Yeah.
know that you're doing this, and that you're pushing and pushing. So yeah, it's happening.
Good.
Well, I'll let you go. But this was fun.
Yeah.
And there's a great restaurant in Paris that I'll have to let you know about, because they have an incredible cellar of like old Loire stuff for like nothing. It's like $80 and you're drinking like an 89. But I don't want to say it here because I don't want too many people to know about it, selfishly.
Okay. Well, you can just text it to me.
Word's getting out, so yeah. Well,
And then
thanks.
I'll just, put it out there.
Thanks for chatting and hanging.
Yeah.
And
Thanks, Paul. That's great.
let's catch up again soon. Be safe, be good.
You too. Be safe.
Look forward to
Be safe,
reading
everybody.
your Loire review.
I'll let you know when it comes out. All right. See ya.
Thanks, man. Later.